Cuban Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez called for cooperation and solidarity to overcome the global health crisis during the 25th Ordinary Meeting of the Association of Caribbean States Council of Ministers. The US city of New York saw a march to commemorate Juneteenth this Friday. The Africa Regional Certification Commission is set to certify the continent free of wild polio virus in August 2020. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, and I'm Katrina Goss. Cuban Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez, speaking during the 25th Ordinary Meeting of the Association of Caribbean States Council of Ministers, praised the association's actions to combat the coronavirus pandemic. He also called for cooperation and solidarity to overcome the global health crisis.
COVID-19, whose epicenter has shifted to the US and whose effects seriously threaten Latin American and the Caribbean countries, has generated a huge health crisis which represents a threat to life and confirms the need for cooperation and solidarity to face the pandemic and the growing challenges arising from it.
And the Cuban Foreign Minister strongly rejected the inclusion of members of the Association of Caribbean States on lists of non-cooperative states.
I reiterate Cuba's rejection of unilateral lists and certifications that affect countries of this association, just as Cuba rejects the inclusion of member states on the non-cooperative jurisdiction lists and calls for a constructive dialogue in this respect.
UN Special Representative for Haiti, Helena Lime, addressed a virtual meeting of the Security Council today, where she said the COVID-19 pandemic was worsening the already dire economic and humanitarian situation in the country, stretching Haiti's already fragile healthcare system and testing the country's social safety net.
In the absence of adequate resources to support Haiti's emergence from the recession in which it is plunged, the hard-won security and development gains achieved over the course of the past decade and a half risk coming undone, and a primarily domestic problem could transform into a regional issue should an already alarming humanitarian situation continue to worsen and increasing numbers of Haitians be tempted to seek better fortunes abroad. The vicious circle of mistrust, recrimination, and ultimately violence is once again starting to define the dynamics of Haitian politics at a time when the entire society should be unified in its response to the pandemic and striving to lay more virtuous and lasting foundations on which to build its future.
Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro welcomed the beatification of José Gregorio Hernández, known as the Doctor of the Poor, by Pope Francis this Friday. President Maduro noted on Twitter that church bells rang across Venezuela to mark the occasion. Dr. José Gregorio Hernández previously held the title of Venerable, declared by Pope John Paul II in 1986. Dr. Hernández was born in the Venezuelan state of Trujillo in 1864 and was a founding member of the National Academy of Medicine. He passed away in Caracas in June 1919. The move means the popular figure to whom many Venezuelans turn in times of prayer is now one step closer to being declared a saint. As Peru battles with the ongoing pandemic, 3 months into lockdown, Lima residents are organising to help feed their neighbours. Soup kitchens and community pots have become a symbol of the difficult situation faced by a large part of the working population who do not form part of the formal economy. Without unemployment benefits or enough food, many Peruvians continue to leave their homes each day to earn a living as construction workers, street vendors or other types of day labourers. Despite some of the strictest lockdown measures in the region, Peru has reported over 247,000 confirmed coronavirus cases and more than 7,600 fatalities.
There are people and families in worse conditions than me. There are families with 4, 10 children. They're having a worse time. It's painful. And now without a job. It's very difficult and sad because I have children. And when they ask for food, and there is none. I can take it, but they as kids can't.
Brazil's controversial education minister Abraham Weintraub announced his resignation amid the deepening political crisis surrounding the Jair Bolsonaro administration. Well known for his aggressive behaviour, Weintraub made racist comments regarding China, Brazil's main trading partner, and suggested that Supreme Court judges should be imprisoned. His resignation coincided with the arrest of far-right figures linked to a corruption network reportedly managed by the Bolsonaro family. The current political crisis sees far-right President Jair Bolsonaro pitted against the Federal Supreme Court and the National Congress, with a series of allegations of electoral fraud, corruption and fake news befalling the president and his closest allies.
At this moment, I won't talk about my resignation. There is no place for that. What is important is to say that I received an invitation to be a bank director. I have already been a bank director in the past. I am returning to the same post, but this time at the World Bank.
Bolivia, the de facto government is trying to ban the movement towards socialism, which enjoys the broadest popular support, from being able to run in the upcoming elections. Meanwhile, social movements have protested, demanding that the elections be held as scheduled on September 6, despite the regime's attempts to delay the vote.
Social movements said that the de facto coup government doesn't want to hold elections on September 6th, as was agreed upon by political parties and the Electoral Court. Despite that, Janine Áñez continues to campaign. Evo and his coca growers have tried to return to power. On the other hand, there is a path of the government which the majority of Bolivians want, the path of unity, of bonuses, the path of reactivating old economy. The de facto government ministers are also issuing threats with the support of police and the military to the movement towards socialism, and all while repeating the electoral campaign lines of Áñez.
The majority of Bolivians don't want to have a Bolivia where some Bolivians confront others. They want a Bolivia where some help the others. The path of the president is the path of democracy and unity of all Bolivians. It's the path where Bolivians help one another.
The Legislative Assembly approved the law presented by the Electoral Court to hold elections on September 6th, but Janine Áñez says she will be required a scientist report on the evolution of the pandemic, and then said that she would like the elections to be postponed for possibly 2 additional months.
Beginning now, workers are standing up to fight. If they don't enact the law of elections, workers will be in the streets and on the highways.
Social organizations have practically given ultimatum to some of verification of the suspended election will be guaranteed. They should have been held on May 3rd and were held off because of the coronavirus.
To Mrs. Áñez, there are 2 options. One is to immediately approve the date of elections for September 6th. The second option is the uprising of the people, and know that you either go with national democratic elections or you choose the social uprising because the people have had enough.
The de facto government has tried out to outlaw the movement towards socialism, a party running first in the polls, whose members are accused of terrorism. Janine Áñez, who herself is a candidate, is working to maintain the 3rd place standing, all while the 7 candidates of the right go after the 2nd places, standing to try to have a chance in the event of a 2nd round.
Freddy Morales, Telesur, Bolivia.
And we have more stories coming up after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. The US city of New York saw a march to commemorate Juneteenth this Friday. Hundreds of protesters participated in the silent march from the New York neighborhood of Harlem to Seneca Village in Central Park to mark Juneteenth, the date that celebrates the liberation of those who had been held as slaves in the United States. The holiday took on added significance this year amid the nationwide protests against systemic racism.
It's June 19th, so it's Juneteenth, which is a special holiday in the African American community, and I just wanted to come out and show my support, because I feel like it's really important that we not just acknowledge American holidays, but our own holidays as well. Yes, I've been celebrating Juneteenth since 2011. My parents made sure to teach me all the history of our people and not just American history as well, so I'm appreciative of that.
The Director General of the World Health Organization warned on Friday that the COVID-19 pandemic is accelerating, noting that over 150,000 new cases were reported on Thursday, representing the highest number in a single day since the beginning of the outbreak. Meanwhile, the Americas reported half of the new COVID-19 cases, while South Asia and the Middle East regions are now emerging as COVID-19 hotspots.
The world is in a new and dangerous phase. Many people are understandably fed up with being at home. Countries are understandably eager to open up their societies and economies. But the virus is still spreading fast. It is still deadly, and most people are still susceptible. We call on all countries and all people to exercise extreme vigilance.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen proposed a virus recovery package for the bloc, totalling €1.85 trillion during a video-linked summit between EU leaders.
This is a chance Europe cannot afford to miss. I want a Europe which is better able to weather global storms and provide a safe home for future generations. So I'm looking forward to today's discussion. I'm convinced that for common success, we must stay focused on the big picture. We must all pull together. We cannot afford any delay. New MFF, this is a huge stimulus of €1,850 billion. And it does not only help the economies of the countries which were hit hardest by the virus, it also helps the countries whose economies have been hit hard indirectly.
United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres said on Friday that the COVID-19 pandemic has turned the world of work upside down and stressed that things cannot continue as before after this crisis.
The COVID-19 pandemic has turned the world of work upside down. Every worker, every business, and every corner of the globe has been affected. Hundreds of millions of jobs have been lost. The world of work cannot and should not look the same after this crisis. It's time for a coordinated global, regional, and national effort to create decent work for all as the foundation of a green, inclusive, and resilient recovery. For example, a shift of taxation from payroll to carbon could help to go a long way in this direction. With smart and timely action at all levels and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development as our guide, we can emerge from this crisis stronger, with better jobs and a brighter, more equal and greener future for all.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has called to fully repair the environmental damage caused after 21,000 tons of diesel oil were spilled from a power plant in Norilsk in late May.
It's necessary to not just quickly clear the mess, but to ensure high-quality recuperation of soil and waterways. This is why the strictest oversight is needed in the liquidation of the consequences of the disaster. Obviously, the disaster has brought dire consequences for the environment and severely impacted by adversity in water bodies. It will take a lot of time to reclaim and restore the environment. The employees of the Norilsk Nickel Company must continue to clean up work until the damage is completely eliminated.
The Chinese government stressed on Friday that if the US decides to cut off economic ties with China, it will only further harm the American people. Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesman Xiao Lishan said on Friday that to artificially cut off the global industrial and supply chain and change the laws of economics is unrealistic and unadvisable. He stressed the move would not help the United States to solve its problems. The comments came after President Donald Trump renewed his threats to cut ties a day after US diplomats held high-level talks with Beijing and after his top US trade negotiator said severing trade relations was not a viable option. The Chinese capital, Beijing, reported 25 new locally transmitted COVID-19 cases on Thursday, with 21 linked to the Xinfadi wholesale market in the southern district of Fengtai, according to local authorities.
On Thursday, Beijing detected 25 new confirmed COVID-19 cases, with 17 male cases and 8 female cases. Their average age is 45, with the youngest being 25 years old and the eldest being 69. One of them has Beijing household registration and 24 have household registrations in other provinces. 18 cases occur in Fengtai District, 5 ones in Daxing District, 1 in Chichen District, and 1 in Haidian District. In clinical types, 7 are mild cases and 18 are normal cases. Of the total confirmed cases, 21 are related to the Xinfadi wholesale market. The remaining 4 cases are under epidemiological investigation.
Much of Asia is preparing to witness the annular solar eclipse on Sunday, June 21st. The phenomenon is often called a ring of fire eclipse because, unlike a normal eclipse, the moon doesn't fully cover the sun, leaving a rim of golden sunlight still visible. According to NASA, views of the eclipse will begin in Central Africa around 3:50 GMT on Sunday, then move east through Ethiopia, Yemen, Oman, Pakistan, parts of India and China. Chiayi City in Taiwan, which is expected to have maximum views of the phenomenon, is holding a public event at a park where people can observe the entire process. And we're taking one last very short break now, so stay with us for more. Welcome back to From the South. The Africa Regional Certification Commission is set to certify the continent free of wild polio virus in August 2020, as final documentation on the matter has been handed over by Cameroon, the Central African Republic, Nigeria and South Sudan. The Commission is mandated to certify the eradication of wild polio virus in all 47 countries in the WHO Africa region. WHO Regional Director for Africa, Dr. Matshidiso Maeti, extended congratulations to the 4 countries, stressing that their achievement is a major step towards wild poliovirus eradication. The Commission previously received poliovirus figures from 43 countries in the region. If the free of wild poliovirus status is granted, the African region will become the 5th of 6 WHO regions to be declared free of the virus. Thousands of people have taken to the streets in Mali to demand the resignation of the president. Tens of thousands protested in the capital, Bamako, calling for the ousting of President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta. The demonstrators reject the president's handling of the violent insurgency that emerged in the northern part of the country in 2012. A slow pace of political reforms, a struggling economy, and a perception of government corruption have also increased opposition to the president. Palestinians living in the Jordan Valley are afraid of losing their land and being unable to access their crops if Israel continues with its illegal annexation plans. The Jordan River shorelands, which were used for grazing, have been usurped by illegal Israeli settlers. Palestinians in the area are forced to work for the settlers for about $3 an hour. US President Donald Trump proposed the annexation plan as part of his so-called Middle East peace plan. The plan has been widely rejected internationally as it undermines Palestine's right to self-determination. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced that the annexation process is set to begin on July 1st. The African Union has launched a unified trade platform to enable the supply of COVID-19 related critical medical equipment in the continent. The project is called the African Medical Supplies Platform and is a digital portal that will serve to coordinate the complicated access, procurement and distribution of medical supplies needed by each member of the AU. The project seeks to improve access by African countries to the health materials needed to fight the COVID-19 pandemic. The new platform had been announced on Wednesday by South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, although the official launch came on Thursday at a press conference led by the South African President and the Commission Chair.
So what we did was I appointed
In the Democratic Republic of Congo, artists are decorating the walls of the capital, Kinshasa, to raise awareness about the COVID-19 pandemic. Director of the Academy of Fine Arts, Henry Kalama, said that the aim of this campaign is to fight misinformation, to show that the disease is real and that everyone must unite to fight the pandemic.
The statuettes, they are protective in themselves, and therefore the most important thing for me was to pass on this message of protection. And I think the statue was the right way to get that message across, because it's protective in itself.
Prime Minister of Lebanon Hassan Diab assured that national interests will be prioritised in the face of the latest US sanctions against neighbouring Syria. The Caesar Syria Civilian Protection Act punishes any person or state with links to Syria. According to the Lebanese Prime Minister, the interests of his country will not be subject to the US law. Diab referred to warnings from former Prime Minister Saad Hariri about the consequences of not complying with this extraterritorial US legislation. German NGO Sea-Watch says it has picked up over 210 migrants off Libya's coast this week. The NGO has performed 3 rescues over the last 48 hours and is demanding a port of safety to immediately disembark those rescued. In a first operation on Wednesday morning, almost 100 migrants were rescued around 29 nautical miles off the coast of Libya. Some were given immediate medical attention, among them women and children, as well as several who were injured. Sea-Watch noted in a statement that the injuries included chemical burns from the fuel saltwater mixture in the dinghy they were travelling aboard. The organisation added that Libyan coast guards would have returned the migrants to Libya if they had not brought them to safety first. And we've come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Katrina Goss, and thank you for watching.